Hello, Tegan.
Hey, Grant.
Hello, Sara.
Hi.
Hi, welcome back to CBC Radio 3.
CBC.
Woo!
So I've had the pleasure of listening to an advance copy of the new album, and I am enjoying it very much, so congratulations.
Thank you.
So how are you feeling about it, Tegan?
I'm feeling really good. You know, initially the first couple months, I was actually kind of like not enjoying listening to it. Not because I didn't enjoy it, but just because this is like the first sort of record that we've really micromanaged every little detail. And Sarah and I kind of recorded like the majority of the keyboards and guitars and pianos and vocals. So I felt like I knew the record intensely, like intimately. I had an intense intimacy with the record, and it was kind of like...
It's disgusting.
I know. But I kind of felt like I had to maybe take a break from my partner, which was the con, like the record, and take some space. And
Confusing metaphor.
Is it?
I think it is.
Now, what about you, Sara?
I love the con. I think it's great. And it's been an interesting dynamic.
Well, I'm not saying I didn't like it. I just said I needed to take some space
well, you said
from
that you
it.
took space from it, like you didn't want to be intimate with it anymore, which made it almost seem like you wanted to be intimate with me, which is disgusting. So
No, I didn't say that.
All right, well, now let's talk about the actual title because it's quite intriguing, The Con, and I know it's a song on the record too, but why did you choose that as the title to the entire album?
Well, when we actually started trying to name the record The Con, the song The Con was actually a song called Encircle Me, and it was hotly debated because I hated it, and it was Tegan's song, and not the song, I hated the title. And so it was really interesting because we sort of started talking about lyrics and just in terms of like the artistic direction where the artwork was going to go, and wanting to sort of have this like cohesive idea that was sort of like almost literary, like almost like a book. And so we were looking for something kind of big and wide and open to interpretation. And Tegan sort of came up with this idea that, you know, based on sort of the what her material was written about, and then what my material was written about, that the con sort of worked for both of us. And you know, for her, I know she talks a lot about the con of love, you know, like when you start to date someone and you start to, you know, you sort of almost are a different person than the person you really truly actually are, and you know, which often happens when you're sort of negotiating romance or whatever. And for me, like, you know, short form, like I was just worried about, I was in a relationship already, so sort of thinking about like taxes and relationships and stress and anxiety and sort of like, you know, trying to keep it all together and convince the person that you're sleeping next to every night that you're normal and sane and whatever. So we really liked the idea of the con as being sort of like a almost like a, you know, like not dishonesty, but like, you know, when you're sort of trying to have a different face than the one you really have.
Yeah, it's an inadvertent like personality trait almost.
Wow.
Conning people.
That's great.
We're con artists.
On a light note, dare I ask what the pros and cons of being in Tegan and Sara are in 2007? Tegan.
You do the pros.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think they're all pros. Like, I think that, you know...
It's not fair because you're trying to take my cons.
I'm not. I don't think... I don't know. I'm on this whole kick. I got brainwashed a few months ago, and ever since I've just kind of been focusing on the positive. So I think that there's just all pros right now.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Well, I went to this like...
She read The Secret, and she's like, oh, way up in Oprah right now. So
I did read The Secret, but it was like a combination of like finishing the record and starting to work again, and I was going to this like weird therapy that all works with with your subconscious, and I don't know. I just like after like 3 weeks, I was like a different person.
Really? Are you being serious?
Yeah.
What is The Secret?
Well, like, The Secret was this, like, I mean, that I'm using lightly. Like, I mean, that wasn't really what it was all about. But the whole concept behind The Secret is just really the law of attraction. So if you put out positive things, you get positive things back.
If you want jewels, you will get them.
Well, it's not so specific, but if you put out positivity, then you receive. And basically, it's like all these very successful, wealthy people, like, over all of time, had this sort of concept, you know, like, and it's basically just like gravity, you know, if you put out negative things, then that's what you should expect back. And I don't know, I was kind of like, yeah, that's a bit simple, but it's more about changing the way you think. And I think that, like, for this record, I mean, me personally, I broke up out of a 5-year relationship, and I took a year off for the first time in 10 years, and I really was engaging in some like incredible like self, you know, awareness, like some like real like thinking about just like who I was, what I wanted, where I'd gone, where I was gonna go, what I what I was gonna change about myself, and kind of went to this like really dark, dramatic, like place to write this record, and when I came out of it I was like, whoa, like how do I get
So maybe
how do I get out?
maybe a pro for you is that you're going to be surrounded by hella hot people come tour time.
I hope so.
All right. Well, it sounds like you're in a good place, Tegan. Now, Sarah, what about the cons, if
Well,
there are any?
I can give you lots of cons. No, I don't. I agree with Tegan. I think that to be Tegan and Sara in 2007, there's tons of pros. I mean, we're really lucky. We really feel excited about this record, and we get to tour and travel, and we have sort of a new record label situation sort of developing, and that feels really exciting, and the transition is really exciting, and I don't really see any cons except, I mean, it's hard to know where to park your helicopter. It's like, do you park it next to your bike or do you park it next to your apartment? Like, it's just so confusing.
You have worked with some really great producers over the years, and it sounds like you've co-produced this new one. Mm-hmm. Hawksley Workman early on, then the team of JCDC, the guys responsible for the New Pornographers, and 2 awesome records from you. And now you've moved on to Chris Walla from Death Cab for Cutie. What did he bring to the table?
He brought... Well, I mean, he lives in Portland, and he had his own studio in Portland set up in his house and everything. And so when we like to look at producers as we like to think of it like we're what do you call it, collaborating. Mm-hmm. And so what was great about Chris is that he really is just sort of a bit of a wizard. He just really understands his gear. Not just guitars, but in terms of he's an excellent bass player, a great keyboard player. He's a great singer, and he's just a whiz kid. He's just he's very particular, and he's very he works like Tegan and I. We have a very similar work style. So I mean, in terms of a collaboration, it was very fluid. We really liked his approach to doing the record in sequence, which was exciting for us. We'd been listening to our demos in sequence. We sort of knew what the con was the 14 songs we knew in advance, so we had sort of started listening to it that way, and so we recorded the entire album in sequence.
You mean the order that they appear on the record?
Exactly. So the first song is I Was Married. Well, that day one in the studio was I Was Married. So it was that was a completely different approach. Most generally, I think the typical standard way of doing a record is to go in and do the drums and bass for all the songs, and then sort of go in and do all the instrumentation and then the vocals last. And we really literally went in and built each song individually. So which was exciting for us because that's how we demo and work at home individually by ourselves. And so to go into the studio and have someone sort of driving the ship who was totally on the page about doing it that way was exciting. And Chris is just he just really is a nice human being, and he's very kind and sensitive, and he knew our songs forwards and backwards. He'd had the music for 6-7 months, but there's he sings along. He knows when it's not just we're singing and we're do you think that sounds right? He knows literally what every song was supposed to sound like, what every melody was supposed to do. He really had almost memorized everything that Tegan and I had come up with in our demo process. So, he was just, it was amazing. It was a really, really enjoyable and just really awesome experience to work with him. He's an awesome person.
Well, Tegan, on your DVD, it's Not Fun, Don't Do It. There's some pretty awesome and pretty nasty scraps that you include on the DVD in the recording process of So Jealous. Was this process smoother?
I think so. I actually recently just went and hung out with JCDC and was kind of we were all talking about, our recording experience, and they were asking lots of questions about this process, and we were all laughing because Chris doesn't drink really. While we were recording, there was no drinking, and we didn't really work late nights, and we had a very set out schedule, and we all had subscribed to Chris's iCal and knew what we were going to record every day. And I was kind of joking with John and Dave because that's not how we'd worked with them. It was much more of a free for all, and we didn't have anywhere near as much time, and there were so many more of us cooks in the kitchen, and it was pretty funny to reflect on the 2 different recording styles and also the 2 different processes.
Also too where we were at in our process when we were recording with them, we were in a lot more, we were negative and
I
fighting
think that
a lot.
that was sort of where I sort of went with them, was just that I think our sort of state of mind has changed a lot, and we're taking more time for the writing and the sort of we're balancing that more with sort of our OCD, whereas before it would be we rushed through the writing process, got into the studio, and then it was a full-on panic to get everything done. and we would kind of sometimes have to just like negotiate when to bite our tongues and when to like freak out and be like, we hate it, it sounds horrible. And this time it was just, we knew what to expect going in. And so it was fun, actually. It was really like therapeutic, actually, to go and sit with John and Dave and reflect on the whole experience, because they were so influential on Sarah and I, and had such a huge, like, I think, like, a huge part of like developing who we are as not only as musicians but as people. Like, they really encouraged us and gave us a lot of confidence. And I think Chris was like this really amazing next step for us, because he kind of continued that trend. He was very much about empowering our process. So
I wonder too if Chris would have been able to put up with like me and Tegan screaming and fighting like how we used to with John and Dave. Like John and Dave are so like laid back, and they'd just have a drink and watch us. And whereas like I feel like Chris might have started crying and have like done that thing where they run at you with a blanket and wrap you up in the blanket to calm you down.
Well, so you two are getting along better now than you were then.
Sometimes.
And so what is the relationship like between you two? I mean, it seems odd asking identical twins this, but are you two close?
Well, I mean, it's interesting, like the notion that like because you're a twin somehow that makes you closer. I think we have a very normal sibling relationship, like whatever you have with your brother or sister out there in the world, whatever. Like, I mean, I think that what brings us closer is because we work together. I mean, we've chosen a career path that is the same, and we play in a band. And I mean, I spend as much time with Tegan as I do, like, say, like with my guitar player or my tour manager or whatever. And so, I mean, there's definitely an intimacy, and you start to sort of like get a sort of like a natural style that comes to like the entire group or whatever. And so yeah, we're close. We know each other really well. We spend a lot of time together. And when you're making art with someone, there's a lot of things that go unspoken. Like, I don't necessarily like tell Tegan everything that's going on in my brain like I would say like my like my partner or like my closest friends or something. But like, I think that we understand, or we have to understand, sort of like what's going on, to understand the music. Like, when Tegan sends me a song, she doesn't send me a synopsis. Like, I kind of get it. And I think that comes when you have like, when you're in solidarity, when you understand someone.
Now, when you say sending a song, you guys live in different cities, Montreal, Vancouver. How much of that songwriting is collaborative?
I think this record, it was definitely more collaborative than it had been in the past. Like, when I would send a song to Sarah, I intentionally left a bit of room for her to put in some vocals and guitars, and certainly we're open to hearing each other's suggestions. Like, I would send a song and Sarah would like kind of lop off the end and be like, yeah, unnecessary to have that last chorus in there. And so like we kind of do that kind of collaboration, but we see it as more of like, we play more like a producer role with each other.
Suggestions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, we never have ever sat in a room and been like, all right, let's write a song. I don't think I could do that with anyone, and certainly not Sarah.